Hey, I'm Dr. Patrick Porter. I'm the founder of BrainTap, and I want to help you better your brain. If you want to learn more about how to biohack your brain and bring happiness to your life, your family, your friends, be more successful in all areas of your life, please tune in to the podcast and learn more.
All right, I'm here with Dr. Patrick Porter. He's a PhD, and he has been on the cutting edge of brain training for the last 25 years, and he's the founder of BrainTap. Dr. Patrick, welcome to the show.
Hey, Joel. Thanks for having me. I'm glad to be here.
So I was doing some research on you, and it's you've been meditating like since you're 12 years old. Like, I'm just curious. Like, is this what led you to like becoming who you are today, and then like later your research in obviously brain training, and then being able to create BrainTap, this amazing biohacking device?
Yeah, at first I was just doing this because my dad convinced me it would help me with sports, and it did. And then I found out it helped me in school, and then I went to school for electronics. But I kept helping my dad. He was a Silva method instructor, so our weekends consisted of pretty much 2 weekends of the month going and helping dad do a seminar somewhere. And so I kept helping him. And when I got into my 20s, I started doing the seminars myself, and I started liking that. But I still went to school and got my degree in electronics. So I married the two. When people say, "How did you come from get a degree in psychology and you have this?" My undergraduate's in electronics. So I kind of put the two together, two of my passions that I love, and I love technology. So that's where I'm at.
Yeah. Okay. So maybe let's just kind of backtrack. Maybe a lot of people don't even know about the BrainTap. So I'm just curious, like how, and we'll talk about obviously what BrainTap is, but like, how did you come up with this creation? Like, was there like an aha moment or a day that you were like, this is what we need to start doing? Because it's a combination of so many cool things: binaural beats, isochronic tones, light, holographic music.
Yeah, it started actually with sound alone. The Silva method that my dad used to stop drinking alcohol was actually a meditation, technology-derived meditation using the Silva sound, which we later understood as being the isochronic tones. We didn't realize that at the time, but it played in the background while we meditated and would put us into this deep alpha state. And then from there, I started researching with things like binaurals with a company out of Virginia that is, the HemiSync company. We started working with them and doing some research with them. And then I got involved with a company called Light and Sound Research. So there were 6 of us that actually created the very first light and sound machine called the MC Square. I just happened to be the one that had the electronics background while we were building these in the back office, getting all our parts from a store that maybe some of the listeners don't know is Radio Shack. But we put them all together and did the soldering, and we made a couple hundred back in that back room, and then we got to the point where we could go to another company. But it was basically one thing led to another. For the first 10 years, it was just the same way binaurals work for people that understand that. We didn't know we could put isochronic tones in. That's something we added about 15 years ago. But for the first 10 years, we just were binaural beats, and we took lights and we did the same thing with lights using retinal flashing. And then about 7 years ago, we realized that we could also change the way the brain function works by putting light in through a frequency through the ears. So that's where we got the red and blue lights in the ears. So it kind of evolved. One thing led to another, and we're always playing around with it. I'm very fortunate to now I have a research team that is we're in 11 different universities right now as we speak, doing different studies, Peer 1 universities. And so we're always coming up with different things to work on, think about. People are giving us their equipment, or we're integrating it into what we do, because we do a lot of stacking for those people that understand that. They do BrainTap along with things like PMF and other technologies like that.
Yeah. On the note of binaural beats, I'm really curious because I've heard that like there's a device called out there, the Newcom, right? And they use some very sophisticated binaural beats and like a GABA patch, right? And I remember the founder saying, like, yeah, most binaural beats, like, they only work for like a little bit, but then your brain is like very smart at picking up the patterns, and it'll get like adjusted to the binaural beats. So he's like, not all binaural beats, they work, but they're not like after, let's say, 3 sessions, your brain is like, oh, I know what this is, and it doesn't have the same effect. Have you found that to be the same, or and if that's the truth, then is there anything that you guys do to, I guess, mitigate that or
Oh
make it
yeah.
enhance
One
the
thing is
effect?
that he should follow his own advice and create some more sessions then, because they have a very limited number of sessions. And
That's true.
what I
Yeah.
found is the other side effect is binaurals don't work if you don't have perfect hearing in both ears. So what we've done also, binaurals
Ah.
don't work if it's just one straight binaural beat. A lot of people don't understand. We have an algorithm that changes that binaural beat across the full spectrum of our brainwaves. Whether we're doing gamma training, which they use gamma cream, but we proved with MIT that we get 23% GABA production through the use of light, sound, and vibration. Sound alone will never get what light and sound gets together. I mean, it just will never happen. We live in. Could you imagine just listening to the radio every night? You're gonna unwind. So you turn on the radio show and you listen to I Love Lucy or something. The reality is that we like full color, full spectrum sound. So what we've done is we've actually, most people don't know this either. Your hearing is 30% through your eyes. So through our eyes, we bring in this
Wow.
information. And just to prove that point, every listener out there has been to a talk before where the lecturer is up on stage and you couldn't see them and you couldn't hear them. But as soon as you adjusted your focus, now you can see them, now you can hear them. That's because our primitive reflexes open up those hearing pathways only by sight. So when you're wearing a cloth over your eyes or you're closing your eyes alone, you literally shut down over 30% of your brain. So we want to activate the full brain and the full breadth of what the brain can do. So we actually have also binaurals that work with isochronic tones laid in the background along with frequencies that activate different regions of the brain. So we should never be confused with something like a new calm or even somebody doing binaural beats. That's like baby food that you would use back in the
Yeah.
80s. There's a lot of people that do that. And what we do, no one has ever done the studies that we've done. One of the things we did, just to put this in perspective, our algorithm, it's not
Yeah.
just binaural beats, it's a full algorithm, a full spectrum of different sounds and light frequencies. It's not one of each. It's a whole mirage of those things. And what we found was we put music, which we all know music is a really good therapy. So we put music, we put our pilot study right now. We just finished it. Now it's in Brazil with 150 students going through the bigger study. We took a 45-minute time slice. We took 5 minutes. We did HRV and EEG readings on the brain to get a baseline. We then had them listen to music for 15 minutes. And just as we suspected, they downregulated, they got into alpha, they got a really good feeling. Now, what happened then at the end of that 15 minutes, every person in the study went right back to their same brain state after they were done listening. So, what that tells us is music alone does not train the brain. So, we took that same piece of music at the same time, 5 minutes, we called it a washout. We then had them listen to that music with our algorithm for 15 minutes. At the end of that 15 minutes, their brain did not go back. In fact, it took up to 72 hours for most people to get their brainwave to go back. So that means that we were creating this
Whoa.
full spectrum brainwave. We've shown over time, and this is something that I challenge anyone out there that does biofeedback or neurofeedback to show me a device that does what BrainTap can do, because we in my background, I help people with neurofeedback and biofeedback. I think they're both really good technologies, but they stress the brain. So then the brain does not learn that well. What happens is it has to recover. So the recovery is BrainTap. So if you did the neurofeedback, then you did BrainTap, what we find is that we can accelerate that learning. Just to give you an idea, some people confuse us with Muse. Muse simply
Yeah.
registers what your brain is doing. It doesn't train you to do it. In fact, we had a student at Quantum University in Hawaii. We brought the Muse out. We love the Muse just for registering what the brain's doing, but it's not the same. So we had one of the students went up on stage, and you hear these little birds. So it's an auditory feedback. So, and the problem with that is only 10% of the population is auditory. So when you talk about binaural beats and you talk about the Muse, you've already basically taken 90% off the table because people want to be visual. They're visual learners. But we put the student up on the stage in front of 250 people. She only got 4 birds. And if anybody's out there who's ever done the Muse, that's terrible. She was stressed out. She was in front of the group. She didn't know how to function. So I took her outside. I put her on an alpha training with BrainTap. 20 minutes later, she went back on stage. She got 48 birds. The guy that was demonstrating the Muse,
Wow.
Dr. Corey Rawl, who's all over YouTube doing it, he's like blown away. How did she do that? She didn't even do any training. I go, no, we trained her outside because our brain does not learn the same way. That's why we're revolutionizing the way we learn. At Quantum University, we call it the quantum super learning advantage because you can learn languages, you can use math, you can learn anything faster and better if you get into the right brain state. So a lot of these things they just do like they go, oh, we can help you sleep better. Well, that's a natural side effect of what we do. But the real thing that we help is create what we call the master brainwave. That wasn't my idea. It was a woman by the name of Ann Wise. She actually wrote the book, The Master Brainwave. She used to be with us with Light and Sound Research, and she traveled all over the world measuring people's brains from gurus to business leaders, and she found out that the perfect brain while you're awake is about 45% beta, 30% alpha, about 10% theta, 5 to 10% delta, and then 5 to 10% gamma. It kind of looks like a pyramid. And that gives you the behavioral flexibility to handle and manage stress and gives you energy like you would not believe. You get infinite energy. And we live in an energy economy. So it's not just about getting into a deep state and relaxing and that we've got to get the brainwave to come back. That's why every one of ours, you never stay at the same frequency for 3 seconds. And by the way, we have 1,400 sessions. So you could listen to a different session every day for the next 4 years and never listen to the same thing. So, we're the ones that started that kind of narrative out there, and other companies started picking up on it and saying it, but they're not doing it. I mean, if I only had 10 sessions like the Muse, and GABA cream gives you nothing, you have the world's greatest pharmacy between your ears. You can literally release about $30,000 worth of neurochemicals by getting into the right brain state, whether it's to get into gamma and you start producing GABA, or getting into alpha, you start producing acetylcholine, or getting the deep delta you need during sleep and producing that serotonin you need. Uh, One of the things too, Joel, that we can maybe go into a little bit in the show is in Brazil right now, BrainTap is going through a study, the same study that you would do if you were a drug. So they call it a digital drug study because we're showing that we can, like opioids are so bad out there, and we know that they're destroying people's lives, but we all have more opioid receptors in our brain. So what if we could trigger those? That's what we're doing with BrainTap, and that's what the study's showing. They're doing a fibromyalgia study, and they're finding that about 95% of the people in the study, after about 4 weeks, can manage their pain without medicine for 24 hours as long as they do one brain tap session every 24 hours. So we still have to do something, but we have to train our brain to be in those different brainwave states.
That is huge. I was just thinking as you were talking, because you're talking about this master brainwave state, and I was thinking, wow, this has got to be like a really powerful modality for, I don't know, people with like addictions or something. You're bringing it up like this. Yeah, I mean, what if we could just put people in different states? I mean, are you seeing that with addictions or cravings or things
Oh
like
yeah,
that?
we just final we don't have the results of the study yet. It's pretty promising out of Dallas with Dr. Rosenthal. We did a PTSD study with a psilocybin in BrainTap, and the incredible part of the study was we had members of the study that did not want to do a psilocybin, which is a mushroom for those that don't know it. So that it's psychedelic in nature. So what I did was we took brain maps of people on the psilocybin trips, and then I made the GABA sessions based on those scenarios. And people were having a psilocybin trips without a psilocybin. So the brain also has this.
Wow.
We have receptors in our brain that have those experiences. So we can do that. And what's happening is we're basically reorganizing the brain, because what happens, especially with addiction, is they find one way to do something, and that one way becomes comfortable. And even when they try not to do it that way, they're compelled to go back and do it. Like they think that drinking or some kind of drug is going to help them. What I believe, and what John Marshall, who wrote the book Finding Your Perfect High, says is that they're trying to balance their brain. So one thing we found with every addiction is that usually the left hemisphere has slowed down and the right hemisphere has sped up. And what that means is there's a miscommunication between the information in the brain. So they're not using their best information. And then under stress, that gap gets wider and wider. So we need to reduce the stress, get the brain to work the way it was intended, and people make better decisions and choices.
That is really, really exciting stuff. Wow, that's neat stuff that you guys are doing. Um, I'm also curious. Okay, because you mentioned neurofeedback, and that was one of my questions I was going to have. Everyone talks about neurofeedback. We got the neuro-optimal. I know, and Dr. Andrew Hill does a lot of neurofeedback down in like L.A. area in California. You know, Dave Asprey, 40 years of Zen. I'm curious, in your experience, like it seems like neurofeedback over time with multiple sessions has some sticky effects and some permanent effects. Are you seeing that with BrainTap, or is it one of those things where we have to consistently do it to get in that state? Do you know what I mean?
Well, we did a study with autism. Autistic children um, don't have alpha. Basically, they have zero alpha. That's why they can't modulate between stimming, having that high energy state of beta, and then disassociating that disassociative theta. So what we did is we had a six
Yeah.
week trial. We increased their alpha by 23%. 6 months later, we went back and checked it. They still had 23%. So we don't know if it's going to last
Wow.
forever. But what we do know is
Yeah.
that if you're under stress, you're eating poorly, you're not taking care of your body, then you'll get right back to that old unwanted state. The nice thing is that BrainTap and the solution is so affordable. And then once you get it there, there's a lot of things you can do to maintain that. So I tell people it's kind of like brushing your teeth. If you want to keep your teeth, you're going to brush them. So you're going to have to find some way to mitigate the stress and get the brain to work together. One thing we find is if somebody out there can show me a study with neurofeedback that works over time, I've never seen one. I've never seen one that shows.
There are
I
none.
see
Okay.
them. I see them that show them they work while you're doing it, and you have to do 40 sessions. Then at the end of 40 sessions, which costs about $4,000, they say, "Well, let's do another run of
Yeah.
$4,000." Well, my solution is do 20 sessions of neurofeedback with your brain tap. You'll get there faster, and then use your brain tap to maintain that brain function. And it costs a lot less than $44,000. It's only $650. So I mean, you can get a brain tap for a lot less.
Yeah.
I've not. My focus is always on what can I bring to the masses, because I was one of those people. I was a troubled student. Basically, I want to be an artist. I did not want to be in school, and I thought Sister Barbara just had it out for me. And so, that's why I took, I had, or she really loved me. That's why
She
she
might
had me in
have
her
though.
second grade.
Yeah.
Yes. So
Yeah.
what I found out was that I didn't like to learn because I wasn't comfortable learning. But as soon as I learned how to be comfortable in the classroom, I realized I was a pretty smart guy. I was an honor roll student, and I don't know how that happened other than I would visualize, relax, and do the breathing techniques that they taught you in Silva, and they called it the Silva method.
Yeah.
And then we've kind of went beyond that now because Silva only has certain techniques. They do work, and so that's one of the techniques you would have to do, but you have to do it forever. So I always look for something easy. If only 5% of the world that starts meditating continues meditating, that's a bad number. The reason is people don't know how to do it. In fact, our studies show people when they meditate on their own are actually stressing their brain out. That's why they don't keep doing it. They're not getting the physiological results because typically it takes anywhere between 3 to 6 months to really get into the practice of meditating, and they don't have nobody wants to go through the pain to get to the pleasure of the deep states of meditation. And I even get to go to India, so we've actually measured gurus, and we know that we can get somebody who's never meditated to be in the same physiological state as a guru in 3 sessions. Now, I'm not going to take you to the same
Wow.
place because I don't know where the guru's going, but your physiological state can be in that same brain state. So you can get that same relaxation, that same offloading of stress, and get your brain to begin to function the way that it's intended.
That's phenomenal. And I'm just thinking, I have two boys, 8 and 4 years old, and I'm just thinking, what a gift to be able to give this or kids with ADHD. I mean, I'm sure this is just such a gift for parents to give their kids. Do you get a lot of testimonials and feedback from parents and stuff?
Oh yeah, we on online. If you do hashtag BrainTap, you'll see kids of all ages using it. What we used to do when our kids, I had a son and a daughter, when they got in trouble, I didn't scold them like in the old days. What I did was I had them go. At the time, it was called the MC Square. That was my first unit when they were kids. Now they're 40 years old. So what I would do is say, Alex or Cherie, I'd say, what I want you to do is go do a BrainTap session. I want you to think about 5 different ways you could do it differently, and then you're going to tell me about them when you're done. So they would go into their room, put their MC square on, they do their session. When they were done, they would tell me how they do it differently because that's what our brain needs. It needs different neural pathways. If we just scold them and upset them, make them angry, basically we exacerbated the problem, and that's not good. They've actually learned how to get attention by making problems happen, and I don't want that. I want them to. They call that in psychology stroking. So we want to have the positive strokes, where you encourage the positive behavior and you start to eliminate the negative behavior.
And I just want to describe for people because we just jumped right into this episode, but like the brain tap, what it actually like looks like. I'm wearing headphones. It's a simple. It's so simple, right? You have headphones that are shining the lights into the ears, and that's also where the music's being played. And then you also have the option of putting on like a visor, which is where people are being stimulated as well. Is that correct? Am I describing that
Yes.
correctly?
And what we're trying to do is you can't heal the brain without energy. So light energy, we need to get it into the brain as quickly as possible. So your eyes are not just attached to the brain, your eyes are really brain matter. So what happens is with your eyes closed, you're getting a photic exchange of energy, which is feeding the brain. And the more energy we get in the brain, the quicker we can change the brain and get the brain to function at peak performances. We actually have a technology that our partners we wrote with. It's called the NeuroCheck. In 5 minutes, I can measure somebody's nervous system in 9 different ways and show them. It's one of the studies we did that NIH published where we showed a 38.5% increase in neurological function with one session of BrainTap with women 55, 65 that had never meditated. So one session can do that, and we showed that if you did do BrainTap at least 3 times a week over the next month, that would become your new baseline. That was the average that people did. So you get immediate impact, and then if you do it over time, that becomes your normal. The problem is that people
Yeah.
keep letting the stresses of the day, whether it be chemical, emotional, physical stress, whatever it is, we need to offload that. The recovery cycle is what's missing in most people's lives. They think recovery is doing
Yep.
something on the computer or watching a movie, and those are still stimulating to the brain and the nervous system. So we need to have a way that really stimulates healing or getting you into the parasympathetic state, what we call the thriving brain instead of the surviving brain, which most people hang out in.
Definitely. For you, what is a what's like a program that you try to stick to on a regular basis, and then we'll talk. I know you've got like 6 great programs that people can get into, but I'm just curious, like, what's a typical? What do you try to do for maintenance?
Right. Well, I have a lot of sessions, and I'm probably the only one that's ever listened to all sessions because I usually am the one that encodes them. So typically, most of the time, I'm listening to sessions I've just encoded because I add 20 to 30 new sessions every month. So when somebody's a member, they get access
Wow.
to those through our power user access. But if I'm just listening to something that I like listening to Life Mastery. We have a series called Better Life Me, which is a series of 9 sessions that keep your life balanced. I'm usually doing things with the AM programs because I have, if you came to my home, my upstairs, I have a family room that has a pool table in it, but all around the family room is all my biohacks from my clinic that I didn't need at the clinic anymore that are there. So you'd lay on my MagnaWave sound vibration bed with a brain tap using the Avicent at the same time every morning for 10 minutes. So I try to stack. That's like 5 different technologies at one time, including brain tap. So that's my
Yep.
supercharge in the morning. And then at night we have our low level light therapy that we do while we're watching television using the LZR laser, which my wife and I share back and forth to activate different regions of the body to regain our, because even sleeping you need energy to sleep, but you need the right type of energy. So this is infrared and red light energy that will help you sleep better. So those are kind of my, and then in the middle of the day, uh, I'm usually listening to ones that are just going to knock me out, just kind of zone me out. But I have some that I've encoded for myself that aren't on the playlist because I'm really into learning like Sanskrit language after going to India. So I have series that I've produced that aren't available for prime time, but I play with them all the time. I'm always experimenting and seeing what I can do with gamma, especially to get the brain into that high gamma state.
Very cool. And then I want to just kind of showcase for everybody that doesn't know, you've got a lot of great programs. You've got like a wellness protocol, optimal, weight loss, stress free. Um, like someone like obviously we know stress free, weight loss, but like wellness and optimal. Like what are the big differences here that people can expect?
Well, what people need to understand about brain training is in the morning, most people wake up and their brain is in a high delta state. It hasn't reawakened. So they really need to start the morning with something called SMR training, sensory motor rhythm training. We call that the wake up series. So that's one of the ones there. They're usually only 10 minutes. And we also call that digital coffee because it's going to excite the brain and get you into the most optimum state to learn. So like the optimum wellness or the worry free me, those are kind of like what they say. If you don't know what you want to work on specifically, they're going to help you work with your relationships, your eating. If you think about that wheel of life, whether it's career, spirituality, whatever it is, we're not going to tell you what to think. We're going to teach you how to think. So in the middle of the day, we have what we call a reboot session. We want to take people from an exhausted state into a energized state. So those are about 20 minutes. In one of the studies we did, well, just a small pilot study we did with Kansas City Sport, which is the professional soccer team, they have actually a 20 station brain tapping room. And what they do is we showed them that if the soccer players, after their workout, we scanned their brains with the neuroscan, and we showed them their energy, of course, was depleted because they just exercised, which is what it should look like. Your HRV is going to be down. You just really worked your body. We had them do a brain tap session. We were able to reclaim, on average, about 80% of the energy they had in the morning, which meant they didn't have to go home and have a beer. They didn't have to
Wow.
go do something destructive to try to get back into the normal. And it gave them an evening to have fun with their family and friends. So now, before they leave the facility, everybody does a brain tap with the lymphatic drainage boots. So, they're running all the time. So that's one of
Yeah.
the pictures I typically show at one of my doctor's conferences. And then at night, depending upon how you function, about 20% of the people cannot use the light part of the brain tap at night because they're sensitive to blue light, or they're sensitive to light in general, not just blue light. Any light from 450 nanometer up to about 600 nanometer light can affect your sleep cycle. So that means purples, amber, green. Though these kind of colors will interfere with your sleep cycles for some people. 80% of the people doesn't matter at all. They basically are watching TV, they walk right to bed and go to sleep. So, but if you can either use the earbuds alone to do the go to sleep protocols, or you can put the brain tap on. About 95% of our users do it at night. Like the study we just finished in New Zealand, in Australia, this was coal miners who never see the light of day. They actually go to work in the dark, and go home in the dark. We had them do 3 brain tap sessions a day, but at work. We had them do the morning session at work. We had them do a reboot session in the middle of the day, and then one when they left. And the coal mines let them do it right in the coal. We set up the facility right where they didn't have to leave the coal mines, and we were able to show a 70% improvement in sleep efficiency with people that never see the light of day, which is pretty sad. That's the problem. So I think that if you want to do it now,
Very.
one thing that we do say about the nighttime activity, uh, 20% of the people need to listen to it just their earphones because some people are light sensitive. We find that about 20% of the people are light sensitive to just any light, really. They really should be shutting down the lights, going to bed. Some people will use the amber glasses underneath the brain tap even because they're so light sensitive. So there's different ways they can do it, but
Yeah.
blue light is actually the safest light. It's the shortest light increment, so it's more the energy than it is the color of the light that awakens the brain or gives the brain energy.
And I think I remember hearing you say, I think on another interview, that the blue light that we get from these screens or, the sun or just these fluorescent bulbs that we're surrounded by are like 10,000, like, the quantity of blue light is just so much compared to what you're getting on like the brain tap, right?
Yeah, just the computer screen I'm looking at right now has over 1 million LEDs. We only have 8. So,
Yeah.
the light energy that
Yeah. Yeah.
ours is just enough to trigger brain function. There's a place in the brain called the reticular activating system, and we want to activate that primitive brain to train it. So it's almost like in the old days when people used to work on cars, they had something called a timing light. Well, that's kind of what we're doing to the brain. The brain is going to try to keep up through a science called frequency following response. So it does it through light and sound, and it's really triggering the primitive brain. And that's what really needs to be trained to really have an impact on our stress levels. We can't think our way, in other words, out of
I was
stress.
just thinking as you were talking. Yeah, yeah. I was just thinking as you were talking about the reticular activating system. I'm I'm a big believer in the over the last couple of years, I've really just been getting into subconscious work and really working on reprogramming that. And so, if you're activating that RAS and you're doing that, I mean, you're hitting the subconscious at a certain level. There's got to be a huge effect then in people manifesting things and getting to their goals and dreams. I mean, and by dreams, I'm not talking about sleeping dreams. I'm talking about like actually getting to their goals, right? I mean, do you see that too? As like
Oh,
reprogramming maybe old bad habits?
yeah.
What I'm talking about? Yeah.
There's something when we know now that the words we choose through visualization and the images we create actually can change 2,300 different gene expressions. So not only are you more capable to accomplish your goals, you are more in a position to recognize them, because a lot of people don't recognize the patterns in their life. They, like, for instance, the average person gains 5 to 8 pounds every Christmas season, and they wonder why 10 years later they're 40 pounds, 50 pounds overweight. It didn't happen in 1 year. It happened over the course of 10 years. So part of the brain's genius
Yeah.
is really the way it can recognize patterns. So that's why the small changes that we make, whether it's to, start drinking half your body's weight in ounces of water. For some people, that could be the one piece that gets their body to function, because most of the time it's dehydration. A lot of the problems with the body, or at least we've seen that. So they start drinking water. Some people think soda pop or, caffeinated drinks or coffee is the same as water. It isn't. Our body needs water to function. So that's just a simple solution. It could be breathing techniques. A lot of people go, I know how to breathe, but do they really know how to breathe? I'm going to say no. Most people hold their breath. If you're out there and you go, every once in a while you go,
Yeah.
you
Totally.
you catch that's because you've been holding your breath. And fear and stress causes us to breathe shallow when we need to be belly breathers, not what we call mouth breathers. So we need to get people to breathe deeply and really
Yeah.
really get the oxygen moving through their body.
Yeah, and you brought up weight loss. I coach a lot of people in health coaching, and big topic is weight loss. And I'm sure any of them that are going to be listening to this are going to, come on, Joel, like, how can this brain tap help me lose weight? What would you say to these people?
Well, when they featured us in People magazine, because we sent them 1,000 people that lost half their weight and kept it off for more than 5 years, 1,000 people. So the reason for that was it's not always what you're eating that makes you gain weight. It's what's eating you. So if you can attack it from both angles,
Ooh,
your psychology, you have to change the belief in who you are. Your body doesn't give up on you, but you can give
yeah,
up on your body. So if we feed our body correctly, I say there's 3 phases to wellness. You can't outthink a bad diet. So you've got to eat well, right? Number 2, you've got to move and breathe,
yeah,
because if our nervous system isn't moving and breathing, it's not going to function. That's why sitting is the new smoking. And then we need to do something to have brain
yep,
fitness. That's where BrainTap comes in. Because if you're not changing the way you think about yourself, the way you think about your relationship with food, then you go into autopilot. And there's actually something called hedonistic behavior that they write about. That's when you're feeling depressed, anxious, worry, fear-based. These moods actually trigger the junk food addictions. So we need to, in fact, the movie that I'm shooting here or being interviewed with Ben Greenfield is called Hacking Happiness. So when we talk about biohacking happiness, we can't biohack happiness if we don't have energy. So what people are exchanging
yeah,
short-term gratification for long-term health. So we need to kind of flip that switch. We need to give up a little bit on our short-term gratification for some long-term health and viability. And then what'll happen is our taste buds won't be polluted any longer, or really, you know, when you stop eating sugar as much as people do, and then you go back and have sugar, some things are so sweet you can't believe you used to eat them. And I think that what happens
yeah,
why BrainTap helps also is we can actually measure your metabolism. You have your resting metabolism and your metabolism at movement. We can actually measure if you're a fat burner or a fat storage machine, because your body is either bringing in more more information or as energy, and then it's burning. When we're awake, we should be burning more energy. When we're sleeping, we should be collecting that energy. But most people's body is off because of the neurotransmitters that our brain produces. Because when you think about stress and anxiety, or if they're on uh, prescription medicine, which I believe everyone should work with their medical doctor to get off it, because every SSRI for mood disorders was actually approved for short-term use. It was never approved for long-term use. And it's not supposed to be addictive, but if you've ever had a family member that took it, you know that it is addictive and it's hard to get off because the brain is always trying to offload its energy. If it can get something else to do that part for it, it does it very easily. That's where habits come in. So, that's why dopamine, the beta brain wants dopamine. That's why almost every addiction on the conscious level is a dopamine addiction. So if we can get our dopamine addiction from something else, like accomplishing goals, or, reading a book, or doing some form of exercise, finding out, we're all going to, it's what we put our attention on. So I always tell people, they always say, do you think it's addictive? And I said, well, you can be addicted to good things. I mean, it's just a compulsion. If you have a compulsion to work out, a compulsion to eat healthy, a compulsion to help people, a compulsion to be compassionate, whatever it is, that's okay. I mean, but everything in moderation. If you're too much of those things, you'll be gullible and people will take advantage of you. So everything in moderation, is what I say. And I think that what most people think is they think they're going to take a magic pill and somehow they're going to lose weight. That's never going to happen, because your body's going to do what it needs to do all day long while you have to do what you do. So if you can start treating your body like a machine and your mind like an infinite with an infinite potential, the body's not infinite. It's going to expire. But our consciousness, our energy, we don't know about that, because energy never dies. It transforms. So, there's a saying, never let an old person inhabit your body. So that's where energy comes from. So if you want to lose weight, just get your energy up. And what will happen is your body will naturally start shedding those pounds.
Yeah, that's incredible. The study, the 5-year study, because most people from the average study we see is that they might lose weight in the short term and then they regain it all back within 2 years. So the fact that they've kept it off for 5 years is incredible. That's really amazing.
We had Ohio State University took all of our books and looked over all of our clients. And what most doctors couldn't believe is we had a 93% show-up rate coming into our clinic twice a week. They never missed an appointment, because every time they came in, they did something different. If somebody does the weight loss protocol with BrainTap, we have over 200 sessions just for BrainTap. So if you have a saboteur at work, or you have problems with your weekend weight loss, we have specific targeted sessions for those things. Since that was my business for almost 26 years, was weight loss clinics and stop smoking clinics and alcohol clinics. So we help people with addictions. That was the number one thing that we did before I sold that company in 2006.
Wow. Amazing. Wow. Man, this is great. I got to get a BrainTap. This is incredible. I want to kind of jump into some lightning round questions, but before I go there, is there anything that I didn't ask you that you wish I had?
No, I think you're doing great. I mean, whatever happens, we're going to encourage people to go try it out for themselves. A lot of people don't understand, because the way we explain it, to some people, it's like explaining atmosphere to a fish. They don't understand that it's something you have to experience. Once you have that energy and you realize that you can get it in as little as 10 minutes, you'll keep doing it. Our average user uses our app 28 times a month. So they're using it almost every day. So,
Wow.
So there's some good usage there.
Yeah. Yeah, and I know you guys have you can start for free. You can start a free trial.
Yep.
So there's, no harm there. I'm curious, though, actually, before we jump into lightning round, do you have, you have tons, but I'm just curious if there's a testimonial or just like one that just stands out like for you a lot that, someone that started BrainTap and just completely 180 on their life.
I get blown away almost every week, because our social media team sends me those. They just post them online, tell us, what's going on from, people telling us that they weren't able to conceive to being so relaxed and comfortable that within 3 months they were able to conceive and have their baby, because it was a stress disorder. We didn't know they were going to do that. I think the biggest thing that we've seen is in that autism study. That's the one that really blew my mind, because 90% of those
That's
kids,
huge.
once they had 20% alpha, they started speaking, because you need alpha brainwaves to talk. So they were told that there's no help for them. Now, again, it wasn't just BrainTap in the main
Yeah.
focus, but BrainTap was a big part of that solution. So, and I think the other thing is just helping people with stress, and helping them that way to get out of the stress and fear cycle that people are in nowadays is one of the big things. But I mean, if somebody wants to see testimonial, I mean, to me, there's so many of them that I hear about all the time, because we have
Yeah.
2,400 clinics using it. So we have thousands of people every day from a clinical's perspective using it, not only the thousands of people that are using it just on their own that we don't ever hear about, or they might post on social media.
Yeah. Dr. Porter, what's the youngest you see children using it? Just out of curiosity.
Well, we recommend 4 years old, but there's a video online that's pretty funny. It's a baby with colic. The baby's crying, and as soon as the mother puts the brain tap on, the baby stops crying. They take the brain tap off, starts crying. They put the brain tap back on, it stops crying. And I think it's because when the brain's balanced, they don't have pain anymore. Pain only happens in one brainwave. It's called beta.
Yeah.
So once you can get the beta brainwave knocked down and increase your theta and alpha, you can mitigate pain in the body. That's one of the studies we did with American Pain and Wellness, where we had people that had botched surgeries. We showed that within 6 weeks that 97% of them could be pain-free between sessions just by using the brain tap once a day. Because that's what they're doing in Brazil too. They're proving that out, that we can just trigger those opioid receptors in our brain. We don't have to take opioids to get that kind of sensation or feeling.
That's amazing. Awesome stuff. All right, this was
The
great.
other,
Let's
I
jump into
think
some
one
lightning
thing
round
that people
questions
should
and
do
we'll
is
wrap it
too,
up.
they can go online and see Corey Anderson. I think this one blew me away.
Yeah.
He was being interviewed on ESPN. He had just knocked a guy out in 47 seconds. And they said to him, how did what happened? How did you think you were going to do it? He said, "Of course I did. I was using my brain tap in the room before I came out here, and I was listening to Step Into the Spotlight of My Life, and I saw myself knocking him out at 47 seconds." I mean, that's on ESPN. I mean, it was a crazy
I love
quote,
that.
but he visualized it and then went out and realized it. That's typically what happens.
Yeah. Yeah, you guys got. If you go to your Instagram or just anywhere, you can see you got a ton of professional athletes and people, MMA fighters. A lot of people are using it. So
Yeah.
yeah, very cool. All right, you ready for some lightning round questions?
Yes.
I'm curious if the old you could see the new you, what would the new you say?
Well, I think the old you'd be amazed, because I really didn't think that I was smart enough to do anything when I was younger. I mean, I thought, well, I was an athlete, but I never thought I could train people and get up in front of people. Even I still have friends from high school going, "You actually speak in front of people?" Because I never said 2 words in high school. That's the way it was. But things change as we evolve and
Yeah.
do certain things. So I think it would be amazed at what I've accomplished. Uh, just because I don't even think about, I feel like I just started, like, because it's now
Yeah.
everybody's on this tune. But back in the 80s, in 1986, when we invented the very first portable light and sound machine, nobody was doing this, and we were looked at like we were aliens, and I really thought I was only doing it for a while. This was something I was going to do till I figured out what I was going to do with my life, and this is what I've done with my life.
Yeah. I love that. What do you think were some choices that you made that made you who you are today?
Well, one choice was, I actually had a guy tell me, his name is Gil Gilly. He said, "You need to go to Vegas." This guy grew up with Ernest Holmes. He was a mentalist in Vegas. And he told me I was going to meet somebody there named Linnea Reed. I could have said, "This guy's crazy. I'm never going to do it." But I met somebody there named Linnea Reed, and I found out about a professional unit that we miniaturized into the MC Square, and I worked with her. And he told me about that. So I think that was the decision that I could have just said, "This is BS. What are you talking about?" But I thought, what the heck? I'm going to go do it. The universe is conspiring with me for my success. Let me go see what happens. And it did. It happened.
Very cool. I'm curious, you are such a force in the wellness and health world. Is there anybody that you follow or anybody that inspires you?
Oh yeah, yeah. I'm always following people. I mean, of course, I love Dave Asprey just because he's willing to put himself out there on the line doing different things. But I'm always looking at the neuro side of things as well. Like Dr. Amen, he's a hero of mine. In fact, we just got a call from him. He wants to do some things with us. We just haven't figured out what yet. That'll be a real treat for me because he's somebody I follow and really watch his work. Jim Quick, who's now on the BrainTap site. We have some sessions we did with him. I was following his work. It's very similar to Silva, what he teaches in his, the quick method. Very interesting. But I'm always learning. I mean, we made a list one time of all the people that I went to at least a 3-day seminar with. And it was over 100 people over the years. My dad was very big on, nobody talks about the expense of ignorance. They always talk about the cost of an education. So he was really big at, we would always go to seminars. And now we have so many seminars out there. I'm going to doctor seminars at least twice a month, if not 3 times a month. And there's always people there that, it's really great to find people that are smarter than you in different areas so you can just expand what you know. And there's so much wisdom out there now with the internet that it's nice when you meet somebody and find out those people that are for real, that are really doing those things, and then you learn from them. Yeah, I have a lot of heroes. I have like in Think and Grow Rich, where he has you visualize your boardroom of people. Yeah, it's filled with people, some living, some dead, but it's part of my mental process of learning from other people.
Yeah, amazing. I'm a big reader. Are there like 1 to 3 books that just stand out for you that just had a lot of impact in your life and that you would say you should probably go read these too?
Well, the book that changed my life in the very beginning was As a Man Thinketh. It's a very easy book, and I use that with my kids as well. When I started thinking I was smarter than my dad, and he informed me that I was the common denominator in all my troubles, and so he had me read that book and learn. And then Vernon Howard's book, The Power of Positive Thinking, is one that I always start people out on. And then Psycho-Cybernetics, with Maxwell Maltz, because, people can change physically, they can lose weight, but if they still look in the mirror and they see a fat person, or they see somebody out of shape, or they still, beat themselves up, that's not going to change. So those are 3 that I think are really powerful. Now, I read 2 to 3 books a week, so I'm always reading. So if like when I'm doing Jim Quick's book, when I'm working with Jim Quick, I went and read everything Jim Quick wrote. When I'm Dave Asprey, everything Dave Asprey did. Now we sponsor the biohacking events, because that's the kind of thing we want to do. So I'm always reading or listening to books on tape, reading, things like that. So, I love the Blink books and things like that by Maxwell Gladwell, because I love to how people think. I'm always reading about, new thought kind of books where it's about positive psychology. I think that's better than, I've read all the old books, of course, went to school and learned everything not to do, because I'm not big into old world psychology that doesn't really get a result. And I consider that kind of like neurofeedback. There's never been a study that's better than 12% with psychology, which is terrible, because they're actually making the problem worse when they talk about it. So the placebo's up to 40% now. There's a really good book called The Suggestible You that I always recommend people read, because it tells you about what's going on in the world and how they figured out there's actually a gene for those people that are more susceptible to placebos. And the gene in these companies have figured that out, and they're actually stacking the decks in their favor to get drugs to pass through the pharmaceutical chain. So we're all being manipulated. So it's really good to know what's going on. And now, of course, there's a lot of books about, what's going on out there in the world that you have to kind of balance those out. If I read a tough book to read, I'll usually do something fun. I like to keep that right brain, left brain balance going all the time.
Yeah, nice. Those were great recommendations. Thanks. Last couple questions, we'll wrap it up. I'm curious, like and I know you kind of alluded to this already, but any like rituals or hacks or practices that you like to do on a daily basis?
Well, every day I get up and I do my brain tap every morning. I also ground every morning. I sleep on grounding sheets. I have a grounding pillowcase, and I do those kind of things. But I think the main thing, and I'm also a big believer in intermittent fasting. I typically only eat 2 meals a day, and I usually eat my first meal at 1. But as far as rituals, I started a year ago during COVID using blood flow restriction bands. And so I have a ritual where I do my 20 minutes with those, and then I usually either use my sonic vibration, which is a sound vibration plate that you can get on, kind of like the power plate, but it uses sound, or I get on my mini tramp,
Yeah.
or I jump rope, depending. I kind of mix it up because I want to move my lymphatic system. And I do that every morning. I
Yeah.
spend about 2 hours on myself before I go and look at my email, do anything, and I actually have it blocked out on my schedule, so people know that. And I usually record. My first thing I do is I usually record. If I'm home, I usually record something every day. My goal is to produce something that will outlast me. If I can do that every day, that's why when somebody says, "How do you come you got 1,400 sessions and you've written 11 books?" It's because I want to do things that are going to outlive me and change the world in a very positive way.
That is amazing. I love that. Wow. Last but not least, Dr. Patrick Porter, where can people find you and the good folks at BrainTap?
They can look up at BrainTap Tech for social media for BrainTap, or at Dr. Patrick Porter. That's my social media. So they're a little different. Of course, I'm the face of the company, but there's two different sides to that. They can go and try this out. If they want a copy of my book, the one book, Thrive and Overdrive, which is my newest book that's published. I'm writing a book called The Third Wave of Wellness with Rashika Sakri, who used to be the head of wellness at Google. We're writing that together because just those 3 topics I talked about, we're really focusing on those. But they can get a free copy of Thrive and Overdrive if they go to braintap.info. They don't even have to have a credit card. They can go there. They can get access to the app for 15 days. Try it out. If you like it, then you'll get the options. You can buy a 10-minute session, 10 minutes subscription or a 30-minute subscription, and there's no long-term commitment. If you don't want to do it next month, you just go on there and cancel it, and you can come and go as you want. We find that we only have a 1% churn. So if somebody does it, we find that if somebody does it 7 straight days to really feel the benefit, they realize how successful they can be because they've tuned up their brain and started living their best life now.
Yeah, I mean, this just seems like a great thing that almost like every household should have. I mean, every family should have this. I mean, you just think about the harmony and it'll just bring long term. Like, why would you not, right? What an easy investment for every family to have.
That's what I believe. So,
Awesome. Thank you. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, man. Thank you so much, brother. I appreciate you for being on the show.
Thank you, Joel, and thank you for helping me reach my goal of reaching 1 billion brains. So anybody out there, we want to help as many people as possible.